With close to 13,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases across the Republic of Cameroon, Cameroonians, especially those in the west region of Cameroon, are blaming the government's strategy in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. They say the strategy adopted by the government of Cameroon is one thing, and that is the cause of the continuous rise of COVID-19 cases. And Cameroon today saw some of its towns and cities inundated with the heavy downpour. We shall be taking you to some of the hardest hit localities in this edition of the news. Human Rights Watch is on the neck of the government of Cameroon. It was the government of Cameroon to punish top military officials on the Ngarbu massacre. To Human Rights Watch, it is not over with the Ngarbu massacre, nor the mass abuse and crimes committed in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Those are the top stories. Thanks for choosing Equinoxe Television. The heavy downpour across the Republic of Cameroon today saw some major towns and cities inundated, houses buried in water as floods and heavy rains hit some of the localities. As you can see there in images, we are giving you the picture of Marwa, a regional chief town of the Fano region of Cameroon. Streets in major neighborhoods in Marwa 1, Marwa 2 and Marwa 3 subdivisions got highly inundated, water filling the major stretches along the city of Marwa, and of course causing the destruction of the major bridges linking the key neighborhoods of the Fano regional chief town Marwa. And of course it is as a result of the heavy downpour that was recorded across Cameroon today. It should be noted that the rains were also recorded or were also registered in Cameroon's economic capital city Douala, with several places in Douala inundated with rains, and of course reported in several neighborhoods. Reports from Marwa say several properties were destroyed by the heavy rains apart from the bridges, and some other individuals only had to leave their homes to seek refuge in places that are dried off. Local inhabitants in Marwa have continued to blame what they qualify as poor town planning on the parts of local municipal officials and the government of Cameroon. The picture of Marwa is what we saw in some other regions of Cameroon today. We shall be coming back to that in subsequent editions of News on Equinoxe Television. And now we take you on a sad page. Right Honorable Joseph Mbandam, who is also a militant of the Cameroon, the Social Democratic Front political party. Honorable Barrister Joseph Mbandam has begun his last journey to eternity today. His remains were removed from the CFT hospital mortuary in Equinoxe, in neighborhood in Cameroon's political capital city today. The official program published by the family said the corpse removal will be followed by honors at the National Assembly, that is Cameroon's lower house of parliament, where Honorable Joseph Mbandam was one time a deputy speaker, and of course he has been a key member of parliament for the Social Democratic Front. And of course, after the National Assembly, according to the family program, the remains of Honorable Joseph Mbandam were to be taken to the Supreme Court in Yaoundé for honors. It should also be recorded that he was a barrister and of course a member of the Cameroon Bar Council, and of course as a lawyer he was supposed to be given honors at the Supreme Court in the nation's political capital Yaoundé. After that, there was going to be a stopover at Biteng, still in Yaoundé, before his remains taken to the family residence in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Honorable Joseph Mbandam, according to family members, will be buried tomorrow, Saturday, in Yaoundé. Honorable Joseph Mbandam, member of parliament of the Social Democratic Front political party, hailed from the Momo East constituency, that is Batibo, in the Momo division of the northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. Friends and family members, colleagues and militants of the Social Democratic Front answered present today to pay homage and last respect to Honorable Joseph Mbandam. Cameroonians say the poor communication strategy adopted by the government of Cameroon is responsible for the increasing number of COVID-19 cases. It should be recorded that Cameroon has so far surpassed the 12,000 COVID-19 cases. The number of cases have continued to rise in Cameroon, and the country is heading to 13,000 confirmed cases, with over 315 persons killed by the coronavirus pandemic. This argument is that advanced by inhabitants of the west region of Cameroon, who say if COVID-19 has continued to enter into villages and remote localities of the west region, is because the government of Cameroon adopted a very poor strategy. Immaculate Fogwe tells us more in the following report.
In the face of increasing local transmission, Cameroon's Ministry of Public Health has embarked on a mass testing campaign. The strategy, which is meant to track suspected cases in communities, has been able to register a great number of COVID-19 positive cases across the country. In the west region of Cameroon, inhabitants of the area seem ignorant about the mass testing campaigns. They blame it on the poor communication tools currently used by the Ministry of Public Health. A lot of us are not aware of the mass screening campaign organized by the Ministry of Public Health here in Bafoussam. We hope that when next another campaign is organized, there will be enough testing kits so a lot of people can be screened. We're not aware that a campaign like this would take place. We hope that next time they will be able to use appropriate communication tools so a good number of the population are informed. Over 100 persons are said to have been screened at the Chang District Hospital. Dr. Takoju Leon, the Chang District Medical Officer, says 59 persons have been tested positive of COVID-19. The director of the Banjun Hospital, Dr. Jingno Pierre, on the spot, decries the limited number of test kits available in his health establishment. He says out of the 10 persons that were screened, 2 were tested positive. The west region of Cameroon has registered 625 positive COVID-19 cases. The population are called upon to respect hygiene rules in order to avoid further contamination.
Though the communication strategy is highly criticized by Cameroonians who think it is responsible for the ever-increasing number of COVID-19 cases, the government of Cameroon is not actually relenting its effort to contain the spread of COVID-19 at the borders between Cameroon and neighboring Equatorial Guinea at the border town of Kiosi. Measures have been taken by the government of Cameroon to ensure that those who come into the Republic of Cameroon are tested and ensured or are confirmed COVID-19 free, or at least COVID-19 positive, so they could be taken to the rightful quarters for treatment. Smart Jikankrebe traveled to Kiosi in the south region of the Republic of Cameroon, came back and compiled the following report.
The boundary town of Kiosi has been under strict control since Cameroon got its first COVID-19 patient. It's now 4 months since a special control was installed on the boundary town to stop the spread of COVID-19.
La disposition sanitaire a été la suivante.
The health disposition put in place enables that the people of Gabon as well as those of Cameroon, when they arrive, they wash their hands. More to that, we check their temperature. If we see a Gabonese with a high temperature, we send the person back to Gabon, and if the temperature is okay, we allow the person to cross to Cameroon to carry on his business, but they don't sleep in Cameroon.
Ils ne dorment pas, ils partent pour retourner.
The checks are not only done for those coming in from Gabon, but for our own nationals too, who are returning home.
Ils passent d'abord par l'hôpital. Le médecin
They go first to the hospital where a doctor checks them. If no signs or symptoms, it's okay. But those already sick follow the same procedure, but the doctor will give them a medical certificate.
avant que le médecin ne les libère le certificat médical, il les consulte systématiquement pour se rassurer que la maladie en question ne fait pas allusion à cette pandémie.
3 kilometers from here, it is almost the same procedure at the boundaries of Equatorial Guinea and Equinoxe. At the boundary of Equatorial Guinea, much work has not been done since the closure of the borders and the lockdown in Equatorial Guinea. However, some people could still be seen moving.
J'ai commencé le travail ici depuis mars.
I started work here since March, and I have stayed here for 4 months. I test everyone passing here with the thermoflash. If the temperature is up, I send the person to the hospital where the district medical officer does a medical certificate. We keep 2 copies while the person goes with the original.
Une copie ici et un de l'autre bureau là-bas. Donc il garde l'original. Il continue son voyage avec l'original.
The 2 control posts in Gabon and Equatorial Guinea work in collaboration and are being supervised by the health center of Equinoxe.
En cas de patient suspect, le ministère nous a...
If we have a suspect, the Minister of Public Health sent us 25 rapid test kits of COVID-19. We keep the person on quarantine and trace their other contacts.
Nous le mettons en quarantaine et nous essayons de le prélever et retracer ses contacts.
For now, no major incident has occurred since everyone seems to be aware about the danger of coronavirus.
Human Rights Watch says the Anglophone crisis is on a deadlock. Human Rights Watch indicates that separatists are bent on independence for the northeast and southwest regions of Cameroon, while the government of Cameroon is also not ready to give in, and it's standing strong and firm on its position of a united and indivisible Cameroon. We shall be getting Human Rights Watch Central Africa researcher Ilaria Allegrosi, who is our special guest on Talking Point on this edition of the news. She will also be making some shocking revelations with regards to abuses and crimes committed against civilians in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. You don't want to miss that. And now we continue with news on something else. Eline Defo, control team head of the construction roads on the Yaoundé Awai Esso Swa Road in the central region of Cameroon, says the suffering of road users along this stretch of the road will soon be over. He was speaking as activity or construction works resume on the stretch of the road. It should be noted that this is coming after the Minister of Public Works in Cameroon fired the company in charge of construction works for what he qualified as working below the capacity expected. Samanji Kangebe tells us more in the coming report.
It has rained heavily on the Awai Highway, which is on National Road number 10 to Swa, passing through Ese. It has been very difficult to drive freely on this stretch of roads more than 3 years since construction work on this road was not done due to the inability of the Nigerian Road Construction Company, Antidov, to tar the road. The Minister of Public Works terminated its contract on October 8, 2019. At the time of the termination of the contract, the execution rate was at 21%. This extended the sufferings of the road users who were expecting to start using the road since last year.
Vous ne pouvez pas imaginer quelle souffrance on a déjà enduré.
I am a farmer. There was a time that we harvested plantains and kept by the roadside for people to take. Because our roads were not accessible, taking them to the market to sell will yield no dividends.
Même pas la totalité, pour, ne serait-ce que pour avoir le pétrole et le savon pour venir utiliser au village.
The situation hasn't changed yet, but they could now hope for better days ahead as construction work on this stretch of road has started. In order to deliver the project on time, the 80-kilometer stretch of road has been divided into two. The first lot, which is 33 kilometers, starts from the Awai roundabout to Ese village. The new company on the site has started work since April 28. Even though works are ongoing, the contractor says they have some challenges. It is a little challenge we have, which is that of rain. But notwithstanding the little hitches, we have done much. Also, the problem of expropriation will soon be sorted out.
Les documents de ces problèmes d'expropriation ont déjà été finalisés, donc maintenant c'est le problème de paiement.
The second slot covers 49 kilometers. And it runs from Ese to Soa.
Les travaux ont commencé sur ce tronçon.
We started work here on the 14th of April. We are now doing earthwork, which is about 10% execution rate. We are already into 9% of the deadline for this earthwork.
Les travaux sont aujourd'hui en avancement à peu près à 10%, alors que le délai est consommé à environ à 9%.
At this level, there are also some difficulties.
Vous-même, vous avez aussi constaté aujourd'hui que...
You have seen that the rain slowed down our work here. We also have problems of expropriation which are not yet solved.
Qui ne sont pas encore aboutis. Nous attendons toujours, alors qu'il y a certains bâtiments et les tombes qui sont encore dans l'emprise des travaux.
The contract supervisor and the control team of the ongoing construction work reassures after paying a visit to the construction sites, particularly at Slot 1, where a stone pit has been discovered.
Parce que les travaux qui sont arrêtés pour ce lot portent pour près de 70%.
We are hoping that they will respect the deadline because they are in charge of providing the stones that will be needed. The company is already preparing a place for a quarry to be done. When its equipment will be here, effective work shall definitely commence.
Je crois que la pierre permettra d'aller et la dynamique certainement le délai jusqu'à présent.
The Awai Ese Soa stretch of road is amongst the projects chosen by the government, and it will cost more than 43 billion francs CFA. The villages concerned with these roads will only have to wait for at least 2 years to use the 80-kilometer stretch of roads.
Mantikangebede reporting, and now we talk something else. Roland Maxime is the new general manager of the Cameroon Shipyard Engineering Company, better known in French as Chantier Naval. He was installed by the Minister of Transport this day. Roland Di Maximaka will be assisted by Webnjo Abed Bobuin BC, named Deputy General Manager of Chantier Naval. Aka Roland Maxime takes over from late Alfred Fogwe, an Anglophone elite who died last month. Aka Maxime Roland hails from Jum, a locality in the Ja and Lobo division of the South region of the Republic of Cameroon. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we end the first part of news. Up next is Talking Point. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us on the second segment of news. We are on Talking Point, and today we are receiving as guests Madame Ilaria Alegrosi, Central Africa researcher for Human Rights Watch, an international rights group. Madame Ilaria Alegrosi, thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thanks for having me here tonight.
In your recent publication on accountability for serious military abuses committed in Cameroon, you outlined some lapses with the government's conclusive findings on the Ngabu massacre. You talked of chronology, the problem with the victims, the number of victims, and also the non-accountability of top military officials in the incident. Can you establish or give us details on that?
Yes, sure. First of all, I think that the fact that there was an investigation was already a very first good step. ensure that the government was willing to ensure some accountability for military abuse. But now, to be clear, we disagree on some of the key points of the investigation, as you mentioned, with regards to, first of all, the information provided to the public, secondly, the timeline of the attack, third, the number of people killed, and fourth, the responsibilities for this massacre. First of all, no one except maybe those who conducted the investigations and some judicial authorities have had access to the full report of the investigation. The public, human rights groups, and the families of the victims were not provided with the full report, but just with a short summary with some highlights. But this wasn't very comprehensive, and it wasn't exhaustive enough, and also left room for misunderstandings, for lots of questions which could have been addressed if the full report was made public. Secondly, we continue to believe that these killings were deliberate and committed in a reprisal attack by the military, who accused the local population of collaborating and sheltering the separatists. We disagree on the investigation. So I mentioned the first one, which is the information made public. Then the second one is the fact that we continue to believe that these killings were deliberate and aimed at punishing the population accused to support or shelter the armed separatists. So this was a reprisal attack. There was no exchange of gunfire between the separatists and the military and the vigilantes, according to the information we got based on witnesses' account. Thirdly, we continue to put the number of civilian casualties at 21, including 13 children, while the findings of the government investigation provided a lower figure. And fourth, we think that the Commission's findings really cut the line of responsibility too far down, and they only went after low-ranking soldiers, omitting that those soldiers actually acted following orders from the hierarchy. Finally, there's another point, the fact that the investigation does not appear to say anything regarding the involvement of the Rapid Intervention Battalion, this elite unit of the Cameroonian army. We confirmed through our research that they were involved in the massacre, and this omission, this silence regarding their involvement is particularly emblematic because the beer has always enjoyed widespread impunity, and also the feeling and the perception among the beer themselves that they really are above the law.
All right, Madam, you've been monitoring the Anglophone crisis very closely. Human Rights Watch has been very keen on happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. Now, taking just that crisis as a point of study now, how often has the government of Cameroon shown proof of holding its soldiers responsible for crimes and abuses committed?
Well, to the best of our knowledge, this is the very first time that the government admitted publicly that their forces were involved in killing civilians. There might have been other instances, other cases where soldiers were prosecuted and held accountable. Information about that, and certainly the public opinion doesn't know this either. We are, of course, however, aware of the trial involving the 7 soldiers arrested in connection with the infamous video filmed in the far north, but this concerns another crisis, another conflict in Cameroon, a trial which unfortunately has gone somehow off the radar, including because it's being held behind closed doors. I think public accountability is really important. It really matters. It can make a difference. So public trials involving abusive members of the security forces can really set a precedent and send a message that impunity and abuses won't be tolerated.
You made a key statement in your recent publication. You said that these killings are a blatant example of abuses committed by soldiers in the regions and could serve as a catalyst for establishing a responsibility and ultimate progress in the fight against impunity. Now, the question, because you went further to outline the fact that international pressure pushed the government of Cameroon to finally admit the responsibility and the involvement of soldiers in this. Now, the question is, why hasn't the international pressure been able to push the government to launch inquiries into other abuses committed in these regions, and even to get the government to publish inquiries of some which have already been launched? I have an example of one which happened in Baminda 2 subdivision, where we had properties destroyed in some villages within the Baminda 2 subdivision. An inquiry was launched, but we are still to have the findings published.
Yeah, I remember that case. I think it's about the widespread destruction of property in Mancon in Bamenda last year, and we had documented this case, and indeed an investigation was promised, but as far as you know, there was no follow-up and there was no progress on that. Generally speaking, I think that the massacre in Garbo was, as we Italians would say, the drop of water that has made the vase overflown. It means that it was really like an emblematic case of deliberate killings, and there was sustained international and national pressure and attention on shedding the light about what happened. We have seen, by the way, the same level of attention and the same level of mobilization nationally and internationally with the death in custody of the independent journalist Samuel Wazizi. I don't want to say that other cases did not deserve the same level of attention, please don't take me wrong, but I'm just saying that there was a combination of efforts at the national level and international level, which made these cases to become really emblematic. And I do believe that the attack in Garbo was not an isolated case. It's part of a long history and pattern of military abuse, and other cases should really deserve the same level of attention and investigation that the Garbo massacre received.
But before the Ngabo massacre, the Anglophone crisis erupted in 2016. There have been killings in the two English-speaking regions. There have been destruction of properties. Houses have been burnt since the escalation of the Anglophone crisis. Now, when you talk about the fact that the Cameroonian military has been enjoying impunity for long, what could explain for that long impunity in Cameroon?
Well, thank you. I think this is a very complex question in terms of what has led the impunity to flourish in Cameroon. It deserves also a complex answer and combination of different factors. First of all, the lack of credible investigations and prosecutions, a weak military justice system, and also concerns over its lack of independence. And as I mentioned before, also the lack of public condemnation for serious crimes committed by the security forces, or omission of these crimes, or distortion of evidence. The case in Garbo has been particularly emblematic with this regard, and also the death in custody of Samuel Wazizi. His death was only acknowledged by the government 10 months after he died, although the government knew that he died in custody. And then I think also another factor which can contribute really to for impunity to flourish is the lack of reporting of crimes and abuses by those who suffered these abuses for different reasons, for fear of retaliation by the perpetrators, but also lack of knowledge of the legal system, or perhaps also the perception that the authorities won't do anything.
Madam Ilaria Aligrossi, are you by any way indicating also that if other scenes, dramatic scenes in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon have not had such international exposure, have not had persons held accountable, consequently it's because the public has not been able to play its role of condemnation adequately in most cases?
Well, I think that the local human rights groups and local civil society organizations have done an amazing job in continuing to push the authorities and press the authorities, urging them to investigate abuses, to denounce these abuses. They are working in a very difficult and challenging environment, and I think their work should really not be underestimated. They are those at the front line. They are trying to do their best to advocate with the local authorities, the regional authorities, the national authorities, to make sure that these abuses are denounced and investigated. And I think when they work, which is fundamental and is crucial, is also supported by international organizations, there can be a bigger action and a bigger impact. So that is what perhaps made the case of the massacre in Garbo becoming somehow more emblematic than others.
But in your organization, Human Rights Watch has in many cases published its reports on activities or atrocities committed in these regions, and both parties have been blamed. In most cases too, you have blamed separatist fighters or non-state armed groups for committing atrocities. Haven't they also been enjoying some sort of impunity, or how often have they been punished for crimes and abuses committed on civilians in these regions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crucial to remind that abuses are being committed by both sides. Armed separatists have waged a violent campaign against civilians. They have targeted civilians, they have killed them, they have kidnapped hundreds of them, they have maimed and tortured people, including children and students, just for going to school. They have turned schools into camps where they keep the weapons, the ammunition, where they torture their hostages. So accountability for serious military abuse should go really hand in hand with accountability for serious crimes and abuses committed by the armed separatists. Important to really highlight the fact that violence is coming from both sides, and that civilians are being caught in the middle.
Now, if separatists commit crimes and abuses, who holds them responsible? Now, we have as knowledge traditionally that the government will bring soldiers to book in cases where they commit atrocities. Now, if this is done by separatists, who are normally supposed to bring them to book?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Now, if separatists commit abuses, who is supposed to hold them accountable? If they are enjoying some impunity, who is supposed to bring them and punish them for crimes they have committed in these regions? I'm talking about separatist fighters.
Well, first of all, I think it would be crucial for the leaders to provide clear instructions to the fighters to respect human rights and not target the civilians, and to bring discipline among their ranks. And secondly, in terms of investigation and prosecutions, Cameroonian authorities have already arrested hundreds of suspected separatists They are being held in Cameroonian prisons and they are facing trial.
All right, Madam Ilaria Alegrossi, with this much push and campaign for accountability and impunity to come to an end, I want us to imagine a scenario where accountability is reinforced in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, but civilians are repeatedly being killed. What would be the fate of these regions?
Well, I think the cycle of violence in the Anglophone regions is unfortunately set to continue for a while, at least until accountability is strengthened and until also parties come to the negotiation table. Impunity has been one of the key drivers of the conflict, of the crisis. And addressing impunity would already be a very good step to end the violence. But at the same time, I think that that there should be other efforts, political efforts, to foster dialogue. But for the time being, I see the Anglophone crisis really be in a sort of deadlock. There is no dialogue between Yaoundé and the separatists. Both refusing to give some ground. The government is relying on a very heavy military response. It also refused to discuss any form of the state. It has proposed a decentralization model which doesn't look like it could grant sufficient powers to local authorities. And on the other hand, you have the separatists asking for independence and also unwilling to give ground. So I think that it's not going to be easy to find a solution for this crisis, which is very complex and require both political and efforts at the national level, but also at the to support mediation among the parties, mainly through an international mediator. But I see the cycle of violence, unfortunately, continuing in the Anglophone now with the threat posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Violence has shown no sign of slowing. Attacks by the separatists are continuing. Military operations are also going on. And again, civilians are paying the highest price. Yet so many, hundreds of thousands of IDPs, of internally displaced people in the Anglophone regions, people who are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. So this is another aspect, the humanitarian crisis, which deserves more attention and more support for the organizations which are at the front line helping those in need.
What does Human Rights Watch think about the government's plan to reconstruct and develop the northwest and southwest region at the point where Human Rights Watch knows or sees that a cycle of violence is on a continuous basis in the northwest and southwest regions? People are still being displaced, and you are actually seeing a deadlock. Now the government is that's in a move to reconstruct and develop the regions. How do you appreciate that?
I think the reconstruction plan is a good plan, although I have to confess I didn't really read the plan, so I don't know the details of this plan, but ensuring reconstruction of the Anglophone regions where there was widespread violence and widespread destruction of public and private properties is absolutely necessary, and communities should be compensated for their losses. So having a reconstruction plan which involves the grassroots population and the victims, those affected, I think it's fundamental, and so I cannot comment on the details of the plan, but I think that it's important, it's fundamental to ensure compensation for the victims and for their terrible losses.
Thanks very much, Ilaria Alegrossi, for your intervention.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are glad you stayed with us. We had as guest today Madam Ilaria Alegrosi, Central Africa researcher for Human Rights Watch and International Rights Group. And that's where we end this edition of the Primetime News on Equinoxe Television. Have a nice day and a blessed day in the company of programs on Equinoxe Television.